Alright guys, I'm the Urban Sentinel and I'm bringing you another one. The thumbnail that caught your attention, "This Will Happen Fast 2, is in reference to an older video that I did, "This Will Happen Fast." This is a follow-up add-on to that, so let's get into it. Right off the top, we're just going to touch on Russia and Ukraine. Things are still moving along the way that they are. I personally feel Russia has not committed fully to the invasion, even though they've put troops and armor in and they're lobbing rockets and everything else. I still think that they're working with the JV team. They haven't sent the varsity onto the field. It's still the first quarter. We don't know what the game plan is going to be. I personally don't believe that Putin's just going to, it's over and done with, call everyone back home and say, hey, sorry about that, and, walk away from it. I think that there's still more to come. Whether or not Putin's waiting to see who else actually joins into the fight, that I'm not sure about. Maybe he's looking to see who's going to commit more resources and then look to target those areas, or maybe he's waiting for more of these high-end resources to come in and then take them all out. I just find it kind of strange that for what we have been seeing on the internet and the news, most of the Russian soldiers that have been captured and interviewed tend to be in their early to mid 20s, maybe 30s. Many of them are conscripted. They've only been in the military for a few months, at the minimum 1 or 2 years. So they're not veteran soldiers from fighting in Chechnya and Crimea. These aren't the 40-year-old men that you would expect to be in the military fighting. And it comes down to one of two things. You ask, where are they? And then you have to kind of think about, well, what is the point in sending in junky hardware and inexperienced troops unless you have a game plan, a follow-up that you're going to, bring into it. Moving into the next big boy on the block, China. We haven't heard much about China making moves to Taiwan. Perhaps China is taking a lesson looking at how Russia went into Ukraine and is reassessing their plans for Taiwan, because it would be a very similar situation. Taiwan, even though it's a small island, it's still a large land mass, and the smaller military that Taiwan has is in the same position. They're on an island. They have nowhere else to go, so they also will be fighting like hell. So China may simply be seeing what Russia has done and the mistakes that it has made and is readjusting their plans. I'm saying readjusting. I'm not saying giving up on their plans. I still feel that, again, China still wants Taiwan, and they're going to figure a way to take it. They may be just adding more supplies, more staging grounds, reevaluating how they're going to go in for their first strike, whatever that may be. Both Russia and China are considered, effectively speaking, near peers, because in a barroom brawl, it would be Russia against the United States, China against the United States, splitting off on two fronts. That's going to be a problem for us. So we would actually need NATO somewhere involved. And if China did go into Taiwan and we got involved, we're going to need the rest of NATO to keep an eye on Russia, because, again, that could be the opportunity that Russia's waiting to send in the big guns after that. With that being said, there is talk about the draft. It came up during the Gulf War. Realistically, we're not going to be doing a draft. 18 to 26-year-old males, you got nothing to immediately worry about. A draft would be a plausible thing if we had a severe loss of resources. If something were to happen where we lost 20% of our active military, if something were to happen where we had lost, 5-10% of strategic resources that we need to keep the military going, then possibly then, yes, a draft would occur. But again, that's a minimal, low likely thing, because once again, even if we were facing off against the entire Russian military and the entire Chinese military, we still have a large active body force as well as the reserve force that we have that's capable of handling that without even dipping into the National Guard units throughout the country. However, smaller nations like North Korea and Iran, militarily, they don't stand a chance. What they've been doing, and it's a smart thing to do, is they've been poking and shin kicking us digitally with cyber attacks, not just recently, but in the past. That's a more effective way for them to chip away at small areas. It's not necessarily that they're going to infiltrate every computer system and shut us down completely, but it's more of hacking into systems, doing denial of service, using third and fourth party layers to give the appearance of a deep infiltration in one area, but they're just skimming information off the top. Maybe they're pulling up information in private businesses that have contracts to the government. Maybe they're targeting our commercial and communication sectors to interrupt that flow. They can be hitting other countries, which other countries have reported cyber attacks, to simply start interfering with the process that we need in terms of our regular communication for business, our economy, getting our supplies in, things like that. They can do those small things. Now, North Korea has been touting its, new big stick. And if you remember a few years ago, it was estimated that they tested a nuclear bomb at around 150 kilotons, is what the analysts were saying that that explosion registered as. This big missile is reported to be the largest mobile ICBM. Now, it could be for two primary reasons. One, the device that they had tested years earlier needs a missile that big to launch it, or they've refined the size and they've gotten it down to smaller warheads with the same yield. So now this big missile might carry multiple warheads, because realistically, North Korea knows it only gets one shot. Literally, it only gets one shot. If they send an ICBM up and we know it's coming towards something of ours, whether it's the continental mainland or something in South Korea or one of our bases around the area, North Korea is done. That's all. But if they send up one missile and it has multiple warheads that can target different areas throughout the globe or over a wider target area, they stand a better chance of inflicting more damage on us before we come after them. But depending upon what they do, a coordinated cyber attacks along with possibly an EMP, it's not going to completely disable our military, but it's going to shut the mainland down, disconnect us completely. So now our military forces, they have their orders, they've got their plans, they're going to keep doing what they're doing, but it's going to take the rest of the country, effectively speaking, a lot longer to pick itself back up and get going. It's going to be harder for us to produce more materials and resources supporting those forces that are abroad. That's the key thing. We have forces abroad, they get support from in here, but if everything is shut down, they have to rely on what they already have, and they have to rely on the allies that we have overseas in Europe, Africa, and Asia. If those places are cut off themselves, or if those places are under a situation where they themselves can't get those resources produced, then we're stuck with what we have for the fight that we're going to fight. The cyber attacks alone by themselves are going to cause problems in addition to what we already have with our supply chain. We already have issues with production in the farmlands, in the facilities looking for the raw materials to assemble the goods, overseas, the shipping, getting things to us in time. Cyber attacks can then also slow that down and interfere with that process, causing more problems. And with the Federal Reserve looking at raising the interest rates 6 times during this year, the cost of goods going up, the reduction of the availability of those goods, and then you throw in cyber attacks that could cause problems in the financial sectors, could cause problems with different service industries in denial of service attacks. Complete chaos. So if you had that going, if you had that already building up just before an EMP took everything out, utter chaos. Even without that, we can just take that off the table. Even without that, farmers, domestically speaking, here are still recovering from droughts, wildfires, and floods from last year. Many of them didn't get their early harvest done because they were taken out by the drought or they were wiped out by the floods. A lot of them right now don't have the manpower. Some of them can't afford basically the fuel they need for their vehicles because they're doing hundreds of thousands of acres to run everything on their farm. The fuel shortage directly still will have an effect on the availability of fertilizer. You and I can walk into a hardware store and pick up a couple bags of fertilizer. Farmers on these large farms, their fertilizer comes by the ton. So it's a different scale perspective for the amount of fertilizer that you and I can get, and we can walk in and say, oh yeah, there was like 30, 40 bags, no problem. It's totally different when you need 2 or 3 tons worth because you've got over 1,000 acres that you have to fertilize and then get cultivated for your planting. So we're going to see a reduction again in products and crops and things like that, along with bird flu. Now, we've had different strains of bird flu. This one that I'm talking about is specifically the H5N2. It's not new, it's not novel, it's been around, it's been here in the US before, but it's one of those flus that are affecting both the domesticated agricultural poultry as well as the wildlife migrational. And that's the issue that they're worried about, is you get, especially now coming into spring, migratory birds coming from South America, heading up the west coast, up through, the Los Angeles County area, going all the way up the western seaboard, as well as going up the east coast through the central heartland. These infected birds, just like humans with the flu, they got to land, they got to eat, pooping and pissing all over the place, interacting with the domestic birds that are there, geese, duck, turkeys, that sort of thing, spreading this. It's not a case of they get it and they die right away. It's just like the flu. Some get it, pass it on, but the bird recovers. Some cases they get it, they get sick, and they die. If that gets into more of our domestic areas, and they've already had to do some cullings where they found birds infected with it, and we're talking, when I say cullings, we're talking not 10, 20 have to be killed. We're talking tens of hundreds of thousands to millions across the different areas in our country that have poultry, that they have to get rid of them, because once one gets it, 20 get it, 100 get it, 10,000 get it, it just spreads. So you're trying to basically cut it off before it kills everything. In some cases, it's a complete decimation. That's going to, again, tie it in with everything that we have right now. It's April, effectively going into May, June, when all of the farming, the planting, the harvesting, all these things are going on. As we're building up, if all these different avenues are getting hit and resources are getting pulled away, we're not going to be able to sustain our normal production levels, and therefore it's going to affect our normal consumption levels. So stuff that you see on the shelves, once again, it's going to start thinning out. And for the people that watch this, especially if you are a prepper and you hear the same argument, well, if people would stop buying all the stuff, we would have it. That's not how that works. In a regular functioning system, you go into a grocery store, you buy 1 can of tuna, it goes into the system. The system knows that that grocery store has 500 cans of tuna, and that they order 250 every week. That one case going, or that 1 can going out, it's in the system and it gets tallied up. When the production facility that cans the tuna receives those orders, it's canning the tuna. Here's the problem. Fishermen catch the tuna, they bring it to those facilities. The facilities don't have aluminum cans to put the tuna in. That's where the issues come down to. Small things like that. Tuna's being caught, the facilities are there, they don't have the aluminum cans they need to pack the tuna. So they can't send out as much because they have fewer cans. That's where the issue is. It's not from you and me buying a couple of cases of tuna that wipes everything out. It's just simply there's not certain materials available to put the goods out. Sometimes it is the goods, sometimes it's what they're packaged in. Those are what affect a lot of the things that are missing on the shelves. That's why some stores and areas will have more of one and less of another. You'll see a wave of things where one store in one region is short on certain supplies, but then they get it 2 weeks later. But then the next store a few miles away, they're low on something else, and it may be another 2 weeks for them. Moving forward, again, I've done an earlier video of what I thought about for these upcoming next 3 months, and I'm still sticking to the overall vibe, as it were, that things aren't going to be fantastic. But I don't know. I'm always hoping for the best, but again, I'm still playing on the fact that it might not be the best summer of love and laziness that we could hope for in 2022 as things move forward. Anyway, that's all I got for you for now. Like, share, subscribe, and please leave some comments down below. I interact with as many of my subscribers as I can. I like reading the comments. Tell me what you think. Tell me what your idea of what these next upcoming couple of days are going to be. All right, so I'll catch you later.